Hello again. This is the third video for Principles of Biology having to do with the scope of life. And in this little section, this is kind of a catch-all information section. I want to talk about first that life is interdependent. You may have heard a certain quote that no man is an island, or you may have heard that when a butterfly flaps its wings in North Carolina, that affects dust movement in China, and so on. It's the concept of interdependence and connectedness between life. And to illustrate that, what did I just do there? Yeah, let me make this go up. I want to show this picture of one of these circles of life, and this is having to do with both matter. So we are looking at forms of matter, and we are also looking at forms of energy. And you probably remember from your previous science classes that the sun is really the main starting source of energy for almost all life on Earth, because the sun's light is used by plants. Yay! And they mention the other organisms that do photosynthesis, like bacteria and algae. And those primary producers take the sun's energy and they use it to produce chemical bonds, which we also know as food molecules. So they are using sunlight and converting it into chemical bonds. And then those chemical bonds that they produce are then eaten or consumed by other organisms that we know as consumers. And they use those bonds as energy to power their life. We can also think of the matter side of this. So if you think about what plants need to grow, they need mineral nutrients from the soil, and they need water, and they need carbon dioxide. And all of those are types of matter. And they will convert that matter into sugars and other larger molecules that also can become food for larger organisms. And the larger organisms take that and then break down their food and form water and carbon dioxide again. And during that process, some of the energy that they are converting is lost as heat. So some of the times in this class we're going to be talking about the conversions of matter, how plants' products become our food, our waste products in essence become building blocks for plants. And the other point I wanted to make with this is that all of the different types of chemical compounds on Earth are almost food for some kind of life form. I'll come back to that another. Second concept I want to cover in this, I already said that all life is cellular. When you see some concept like that keep coming up and I say it over and over, it means it's really important. All life is cellular. All cells, or all life, have certain other things in common. One of them is compartmentalization. There is an inside, there is an outside, there are compartments where different things are going on. And cells usually use membranes. Well, I guess they always use membranes. They use membranes to do that compartmentalization. The other thing that is very characteristic of cells is that they are operating in a watery environment. The inside of a cell is a watery environment. And so water is critical for life as we know it. I have a separate lecture about that. The third thing that all cells have is genetic material. And the one that's most commonly known by the general public is DNA, and this is a picture of DNA. There are other genetic materials called RNA that we'll cover later in the class, but All cells have those characteristics. They have compartments via membranes. They're in a watery environment. The inside of the cell is a watery environment, and they all have genetic material. About the genetic material is that life, as we know it, uses what we call a universal genetic code. So we'll get into this more later in the semester, but if we have DNA to make, for example, earwax, the instructions in our DNA for making earwax would be readable by other organisms as well. So let me give an example of that. If you were looking in the book, you probably saw the figure legend to this picture is describing that these baby mice are glowing. And in fact, they have been genetically engineered to contain a glowing protein that was either derived from jellyfish. I think it was jellyfish. It could have been fireflies. They have a new gene, a new piece of DNA from a different organism that was put into them to make them glowing. Now you might ask, what is the point of that? And it's kind of silly. The point of it was to show what you could do by swapping genes amongst organisms. Hey look, a cool glowing mouse. Well, is that cool? Is that weird? Is that ethical? Those are some things that we'll get into later in this class. But what this is really trying to show is the concept that you can transfer genes between organisms. And if for some reason we had a worldwide shortage of earwax, it would probably not be too difficult of a process to take our genes for making earwax and put it into a microbe and get microbes to make lots of earwax for us. That's silly, but those kinds of things are possible because of the universal genetic code.